like Haytham al-Haddad.
Yeah,
they have
an extremist cleric.
Influence.
He's an extremist.
Well, he might be an extremist in your opinion.
Well, no, Aisha, anyone who... No, Aisha, come on, hold on. Here's where I'm going to have to challenge you. He is on the record, on television, refusing to condemn, on YouTube clips and others that I've looked into thoroughly, I can assure you, Haytham Haddad refuses to condemn female genital mutilation, and that is cutting off female genitalia in the name of one version of one opinion of religion. He refuses to condemn in the ideal conditions the hudud punishments, which is chopping off hands, lashing adulterers. You know, this man believes in the enforcement of medieval Sharia-justified punishments, barbaric punishments on people, but he says in the ideal caliphate. That's extremism, Aisha.
But that is actually not the main issue. That really isn't the main issue. Actually, the hudud punishments and FGM, these are big issues, but they're not the issue.
Well, Aisha, I tell you what, you're saying that's not a main issue. That's worse. You said it was unpalatable to work with the BNP to challenge far-right terrorism. The BNP don't believe in cutting off female genitalia. They're just racist. And I say that word just racist deliberately because when compared to chopping off female genitalia, the BNP got nothing on that. Haytham Haddad believes in unpalatable views. And if you're willing to work with Haytham Haddad to challenge jihadist terrorism, why wouldn't you be willing to work with the BNP to challenge racist terrorism?
Because I don't think the BNP really would want to challenge racist terrorism.
And you think Haytham Haddad, who believes in so-called enforcing so-called Sharia punishments...
He's invested a lot. If you go on YouTube and look at some of his videos, he's invested a lot of his time, and he every day takes emails from people who might be,
Have you heard what, Aisha, have you heard what he says about gays? This isn't the way to challenge extremism, by bringing in somebody who perpetuates the very same extremist ideology but doesn't use violence yet to bring it about. Of course it is. Enforcing theocracy, enforcing one version of Islam over society is what the jihadists want to do. The only difference is Haytham doesn't do it with bombs, he does it with his tongue, and the jihadists do it with bombs. One is criminal, but one is still extremist.
Why does he actively discourage people from using violence?
Well, exactly. So do the BNP, Aisha. So do the BNP's official policy, which is why they remain legal, by the way, right, is not terrorist. That doesn't mean we can work with them, does it? They're not part of the solution.
We're dealing with a huge problem right now.
I know, Aisha, which is why I'm trying to address it in a consistent way. If you do what you're saying, you'll make it worse. Because you'll see that the people who are the ordinary white working class communities in this country will see Muslims willing to work with extremists. What do you think they're going to do? They're then going to embrace the BNP as part of the solution against the terrorism themselves. They're going to say, well, if you can do it, why can't we do it?
I've seen BNP members and their reaction to the Jill Cox killing, and to be honest, most of them were very sympathetic. It's not the case. It's not with the actual killing.
Okay, let's move the example, Aisha. Would you be so? Let's take somebody like Nigel Farage, Katie Hopkins, and these voices who are on the populist right. Why don't you start working with them? They've clearly condemned terrorism, but you don't agree with them, do you?
If they actively did some grassroots.
All right, Tommy Robinson. Every single time there's a violent attack, he condemns it.
It's not enough to condemn it, though, is it? You have.
Well, there you go. Now it's not enough to condemn it. So you're not going to work with Tommy Robinson, but you're prepared to work with somebody who believes in FGM. You're prepared to work with somebody who believes in female genital mutilation. I think we need a bit of nuance here, Aisha. We've got to understand that just because somebody's not a terrorist doesn't mean they're part of the solution. The solution has to come from Muslims who believe unequivocally in human rights-based values, in small L liberal democratic values, which are, by the way, the values of this country. It's the same values that allow you to call up on this radio show, disagree with me, and if I saw you, I'd still buy you a cup of tea, right? Because it's those values that make us who we are as a nation and bind us together. But anyone who doesn't subscribe to those values, they're not the enemy, but they can't be part of the solution.
It's a big shame because we want to be part of the solution.
What do you mean we? You're with me, aren't you? You believe in liberal democratic values, don't you, Aisha?
I am a conservative Muslim. I do believe in democratic values, but I don't completely agree with the liberal values because I consider homosexuality to be sinful.
No, but that's fine. You don't want to enforce your opinion on others, though, do you?
No, of course not. But
there you are. So you're on the liberal democratic side of this. You may be conservative, but you're no different to Jacob Rees-Mogg. He's not an extremist, and nor are you. But the point is, the minute you want to say one day I want a caliphate that punishes gays and criminalizes them, then I've got a problem.
But that's not the issue. The issue is killing people. The issue
do you aspire one day to a Sharia state that will criminalize and outlaw homosexuality?
Yes, I do, because eventually I think that would be I don't actively aspire to it, but eventually, and you would know this because you're in Hizbut, you were in Hizbut.
Yeah, and I reject all those ideas. And the difference is you don't. Would you? Okay, you aspire to one day. You aspire to a caliphate that would criminalize and punish homosexuality. What about adultery? Do you aspire one day to a Sharia-compliant state that punishes adultery?
If the necessary the principles were in place, and then I would agree with that. But
with punishing adultery,
of course, I think adultery is disgusting.
Yep. Okay, and what's the punishment?
Okay, so. Look, as someone who's grown up in this country...
No, don't look me, Aisha. If those ideal Sharia conditions are met, as you've just said, what should the punishment for adultery be?
I'm not trying to evade your question. Stoning to death. I'm not trying to evade your question.
You believe in stoning people to death?
It's part of the Sharia. It's part of the hudud. You can't deny that as a Muslim.
Yes or no? Right? In an ideal Sharia-compliant state, do you believe in stoning adulterers to death?
Okay. I will answer your question if you agree that those actual, the boundaries of what you need to prove, the burden of proof is so high that it would never actually be done, right? If you agree with
an ideal, when the burden of proof is met and all the Sharia conditions are complied with, in an ideal Islamic state, do you endorse the stoning of adulterers to death?
Yes, but in principle, however, I don't believe that it would ever happen because the burden of proof is so high.
I tell you what, Aisha, I thank you for continuing this conversation, because you've just demonstrated precisely why you and people like you who sympathise with your kinds of ideas can never be part of the solution.